Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hold Your Peace Wedding Podcast. My name is Whitney Bigelow. I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Amanda from Everson Events. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
Good. I'm so glad Amanda's here. We've known each other for a while. Our husbands were friends in college, and that's kind of how we met. And then we both ended up in the wedding industry. So it's been so fun to see her just thrive. So I'll let her introduce herself a little bit. Amanda, tell us about who you are, what you do, all that stuff.
Okay, well, first off, I have been inspired by Whitney for so long. She's just watching people in the wedding industry thrive and just go for things and build their own business makes me want to do cool things. So my name's Amanda. I own Everson Events, like Whitney said. I launched my business back in September, and I am a wedding planner, coordinator. I do all the things.
I love it.
Anything you want, I'll do.
That's so fun. So how did you, because I know you have run a couple other businesses in the past, how did you kind of land in the wedding industry? What led you here?
So, I started in catering probably about 8 years ago.
Dang.
And then dove into the world of events. And I feel like I've tried to reach out and explore other things, but every job that I've gotten has led me back into the events world. So dabbling in anything from large conferences, catering, youth camps, don't recommend. And then I finally got into the wedding industry. I had been so thrilled planning my own wedding back in 2018 and decided, well, I might as well try it and see if I hate it. And it was total opposite. I loved it. So I managed a venue in Provo for about a year. And then I moved out to Philadelphia and we lived there last summer, and I managed high-end events at their country club out in Philadelphia, this little cute town called Bluebell. And loved that, and then moved back here and decided, okay, it's time to do it on my own.
That's so fun.
So, and I dabbled in mini pies for a while. It's probably what you're referencing as other businesses.
It's like random side tangent, but Amanda used to make, it was called Mini Pie Supply.
Yep.
And she made these little tiny pies, and she sold them at farmers markets and stuff.
Yep.
And they were freaking delicious.
Yeah. So if you want, I should have brought you some pies. I'm sorry.
No. I don't need those, but she's an entrepreneur queen from the start with pies and weddings, but that's so fun. I just think it's so cool because I think you hear a lot of people just like, it'd be so fun to be a wedding planner, but I don't think people think that's actually a possibility.
Yeah. One, it's totally possible, but two, you have to understand what that entails. And I think that's any job. Mm-hmm. And so the best way to deep dive is to just try it out. I just say to people, if you have a business idea, just go for it. Obviously, make sure you have a little bit of money to put into it, but you don't need a ton of money to start a business. You just need the guts to be willing to do it and go for it. And if you decide, like pies, after a year that you hate baking for 5 hours a day and then going to a market in the blistering heat of Utah summers and sitting. But I made so many friends. I mean, I have met people that I am connected with in the wedding industry.
Really?
Because of that.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
You're so cool. That's so awesome. So with your events company that you've now started, tell us kind of what different services you offer and just in general, what kind of the different levels of wedding planning services are.
Yeah. So I offer pretty classic services. I offer a full planning package, a partial planning package, and a month of coordination package. And you'll find that that's pretty common throughout the wedding industry.
Okay.
But the biggest difference for couples to just recognize is that there's a difference between a planner and a coordinator.
Okay.
And so a planner is pretty much there with you the whole process. They're meeting with vendors with you. They're helping you. They offer design. They're helping you with the design and the aesthetic of your event. And then they're there, the month of and the day of to help you execute everything and bring your vision to life. And a lot of couples really like that. They like to be a little bit more hands-off. They like to be guided through the process. Mm-hmm. I always say that a planner takes the guesswork out of wedding planning because we're here. We know all the answers. And if we don't know an answer, we can find it for you.
Yeah.
And then the coordinator, typically I recommend month of coordination. And we come into the picture, anywhere from 4 to 8 weeks before the wedding.
Okay.
And we work through just the timeline, the managing of vendors, and then the day of coordination itself. So a little less involved, but it also means less money. And so depending on what your situation is, how busy you are with schoolwork, how much you like planning events, some people want to do it all, but I still recommend get the coordinator. Get the person that can be there on the day of to bring it to life so that you don't have to stress. You can just be.
I love that. Yeah, I think a lot of couples, I mean, like in this day and age, we have Pinterest and we have, these brides who have been planning their wedding since they were 10, this whole thing. So that maybe their first thought isn't like, oh, I need to hire a wedding planner, because they do have a vision in their mind. But do you think everyone should have some sort of planner and coordination?
I think that you should. I highly recommend it. It's one thing I regret about my wedding is not hiring somebody to do it, because it was all in my brain. My mom lived out of state, so I planned my entire wedding myself.
Dang.
On a pretty tight budget that my dad gave me, and then we pitched in a little bit and we made it work. And I believe that anybody in any circumstance can plan a beautiful wedding. And obviously it's not going to live up to the Pinterest dream sometimes, but there's a lot of really neat ways to be creative, do some DIY, work with friends, family members to do it. But I think everyone deserves to have a planner, but we can't all afford it. So everyone should try to find a coordinator or find somebody in their life that can step in as a coordinator.
Yeah, I love that. I obviously I've been to a lot of weddings, and the ones where there is, even just sometimes venues themselves will have a coordinator. Even just that makes things go so much more smoothly, because a lot of times it will fall to like the couple's parents to have to like get on the microphone and be like, okay, now it's time to do this. And that's not what they want to be doing on their child's wedding day. No. And it's horribly unorganized, and it just like is so rough. So having somebody who knows exactly what's happening and like can move through the events smoothly, I love that.
It's life-changing. I've walked into venues before and vendors have been there. Who are you? Oh, I'm the wedding planner. Hallelujah! Here we are. And they haven't even met me yet. I have done nothing of my coordination for the day. And they're so thrilled that I'm there just as another body to just eliminate it. Because otherwise, and you've talked about this in previous podcasts, like it falls on the DJ or it falls on the videographer or the photographer or the parents to do it all.
Totally. Yes, I definitely am always way excited when like a planner will email me like a month out and I didn't know they had one. And I'm like, yes. It's going to be a much easier day for me. And you just know things are going to go smoothly. And like the couple's experience is like what I am always concerned about, like making sure they have a good experience. So the planner, that's like their entire purpose. So I love when I'm like, hey, I don't have to worry so much about that. And I can just document and do my actual job they hired me for. And then there's somebody just taking care of the couple. I love that. You mentioned that you help couples with their timeline. And I wanted to talk a little bit about timelines today, because you are probably more of an expert than I. I do try to help my couples if they don't have a planner. They'll send me like a draft sometimes, and I'll like give suggestions based on what I've seen. But when you are working with a couple, how do you go about building their timeline for their day? How do you go about putting their schedule together?
Everything together.
Yeah.
So I talk about with experiences, there's different touch points that happen throughout the day. And so I tell people, we're going to walk through every single touch point that's going to happen. And it's a lot more than you think it is. And so I actually use an awesome software called Timeline Genius that I heard about on a podcast. And I love it because it gives you kind of a draft timeline, and then you can plug in the pieces and make sure everything's there. Anything from like lists of items to remember to plugging in the bridal party numbers, and they can get text reminders throughout the day.
Cool.
It's a really cool software, but it helps me because it just gives me the rough draft. And with all the weddings I've worked, I think every time I just add something to, hey, this could be incorporated into the timeline in the future. And so I've just kind of learned over time what it needs to entail. And so when we meet for our month of meeting, whether they've done full planning or just month of coordination, I ask them all of those questions, and then we plug it into the software. And then they can go and comment on all the timeline items, and we can change things and move things around, and we can edit different times.
That's way sweet.
And then I added all the vendors in to each of the timeline items. So you as the videographer, you don't really need to know when they're picking up the rentals the day before, but you need to know when hair and makeup is going to end so you can be there. Right. So I can tag all of the vendors in the timeline items that apply to them, and then I can send customized timelines to people. So just a little pitch on that. I love that software, but I've just learned over time, you just take it as it comes, and every timeline is slightly different. And I'm sure you've noticed that working all the weddings you have. But the biggest thing is just make a timeline. You know, if you don't have a planner, you don't have to use a fancy software to make a wedding day timeline. Yeah. You just need to do it. But I highly recommend sending it to all of your vendors, because how thrilled would you be if each of your couples a month before the wedding, even if they didn't have a coordinator, said, hey, Whitney, here's our timeline. Yeah. Like, let us know what you think.
I love that. Yeah. Usually I'm having to ask for it, and I do include it in my questionnaire that I do send to them. I'm like, oh, tell me what's going on so I can know where to be and when, okay, that's a really cool software though. Had no idea that existed.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So with timelines, with how wedding days flow, are there like certain mistakes that you see couples making when they're building their timelines, or things that you think couples should avoid, or like places where there's not enough time or too much time? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I was kind of doing some polls on my Instagram the other day about timelines specifically to just see where are people having what we call crunch time, right? Where we're all freaking out. Mom is stressed. The bride is sweating. I'm just trying to stay calm and composed as possible. But I'd say the biggest mistakes are not leaving enough time to get ready.
Okay.
Hair and makeup always takes longer than we want it to. And so I always recommend to couples, make sure you ask your artists, how long is this going to take? And then add buffer time.
Yeah.
Especially if, let's say, the bride and several bridesmaids and the mom and the flower girls are all getting something done, it's going to take a long time.
Yeah.
So either bringing in another artist, like having your hair artist have an assistant.
Yeah.
But also just adding on extra time there so you can just be and breathe afterwards, because the stress before the ceremony is real.
Yeah.
It is so real, and it's okay. Everybody experiences it. So it's not, if you're a bride sitting in your bridal suite freaking out about things, it's okay.
It happens every time.
A second. Yep. There's a lot that's going on.
Yeah.
And then with photo and video time, I always allot at least an hour somewhere in there to make sure that we get all the photos and videos done, and make sure that I'm talking with the other vendors to ensure that we have enough time for everything there. But those are probably the two biggest things. That, and just knowing when everybody arrives is another thing that I've noticed recently. So when is the cake arriving? When is video arriving? When is the caterer arriving? To make sure that if the caterer is only arriving 30 minutes before dinner, maybe we want them to arrive a little bit earlier to make sure that dinner is ready in time.
Yeah. These are all the things you just don't even think about when you're just like, what are my colors going to be? I'm going to plan my wedding.
Yeah. And you pick the Pinterest board and you find all the big vendors, but unfortunately, the hardest part of planning a wedding is what happens in the last month.
Yeah.
And I think that people don't recognize that. And that's when we get the most stressed. That's when we're just screaming at each other because we don't know what's going on. And that's why I recommend, if you can get a coordinator, do it. But I'm also working on a wedding timeline workbook that I'm going to have available to
Very
people.
cool.
So again, if you can't hire a coordinator, buy the workbook, fill it out, and it'll be enough to be able to hand off to somebody else to know all the details for the day.
I love that. That'll be so valuable to people. I love that idea.
It's going to be good.
Okay, so as you've started to, you said that you've just like felt drawn to the event industry and to weddings. Why do you love them? What's your favorite part of them?
So funny enough, I'm an introvert.
Really?
I actually sit on the line between introverted and extrovert. So I get a lot of just energy from one-on-one, but also from being in the background. Somebody on Saturday, the sister of the bride, called me the background goddess. So that's my new tagline. Amanda, the background goddess.
Her new Instagram handle. I love that.
But I think I just I love watching everything come to life. I love watching people dance and party and enjoy the food, but having a purpose at a party is really critical for my enjoyment of it. If I show up at a random party, the likelihood of me enjoying it is probably pretty low, unfortunately. So I think I'm just drawn to that. And particularly with weddings, there's so many unexpected things that happen, and that stresses a lot of people out. I love that. Putting out fires before they happen is the best thing ever.
I love that.
Actual literal fires sometimes.
Are you serious?
Yeah, a tablecloth caught on fire once.
Oh my gosh.
But just executing and watching it. And I've always said I'm like a 12 out of 10 when it comes to organization, which is probably pretty obnoxious. But I've learned to kind of drive that strength and let it not be a weakness. But also just trying to stay as calm and composed for people, because weddings are stressful and they shouldn't be. Yeah. They should just be memorable, and you should just be able to live and enjoy, and your family should be able to watch every part of it. Remember on my wedding day, my mom was running to fix the music before the daddy-daughter dance, and she told me probably about a year ago, I was so stressed because I just wanted to see you and your dad dance, but the music stopped working because we didn't have a DJ. And I just think about that and think about how much stress we can help eliminate as vendors if we just do our job to the best of our ability.
Totally. That's so sad.
I know. She saw it. She saw it in that. It's okay.
No, but I think that's the exact thing that we want couples to avoid is like adding, there's so many things that need to be taken care of. And if you don't hire someone to take care of them, it's going to fall on your family members or your vendors, and they can't be there sitting there enjoying wiping tears during the daddy-daughter dance because they're stressed. Do you have any unpopular opinions about weddings as you've worked them?
Ooh. Okay, so here's one.
Okay.
I love colored wedding dresses.
Really?
I know that that's probably weird to say, and I'll still love you if you wear a white wedding dress. Okay, I did. But just the like soft kind of mauve pink undertones, or I've seen some blue wedding dresses before. And I'm a fan. Here's my thing. If it's not you, don't wear it.
Right.
But if it's you, and I love when couples incorporate things into their weddings that may not be traditional, or some people may not even see as classy. Yeah. But if you can do it in a beautiful way and it represents who you are, I mean, this is the day when you're joining your two lives together. Right. So why not do something a little bit crazy? Yeah. So
that's a hot take. I love that. I've seen some lately that are like floral. You know what I'm saying? They have like patterns on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. I'm kind of a fan. I mean, like, my first take was like, that looks like a fancy prom dress, but then you like really take it in and you let it have its moment, and it's very pretty.
I've also seen some where they just have florals on the veil, like different colored florals and glitter. That's pretty. And just kind of incorporating more of a wildflower look to the day. So if that's your vibe, call me. Just kidding.
A little plug if what we're saying resonates with you. Please hire us. No, I love that. Do you like because you said you love organization. Because I feel like there's kind of two sides of wedding planning. There's like the design part you talked about, like building an aesthetic, decorating, making it like look a certain way. And then there's like the logistics, events, timeline, all of that. Do you like one of those two better, or?
So I'm kind of the odd one out when it comes to planners. I love both.
Really?
I love both. And so I offer full design and planning with that biggest package. But some planners, and this is where you kind of want to look into the lines between planning, design, and coordination. Right. Some will only do the logistics, which is often the hardest part. Yeah. So if you've got the design down, just hire a planner that just does the planning and the logistics and timeline and vendors. Yeah. But I love both. I always wanted to be an interior designer. I was a graphic design major in college for a little bit. And so the design really intrigues me. So that plus the organization, I guess, is the wham.
I love that.
Bang.
If couples do hire you for design, do they kind of send you their inspiration, what they're hoping for, and you just kind of run with it? Or how does that work?
So my goal with my clients is always to just be a guide for them. And so I'm there every step of the way, unlimited communication through email, and then we have set meetings that we schedule together. But I want them to be super involved in the process because it's their day. And I don't want to take that away from them, but I'm also there to eliminate the stresses as they come. Right. And so usually I tell them, put together your design board, and then we'll make it into a more official mood board for the wedding. Okay. So incorporating, let's actually nail down the colors. Let's nail down which of these 72 bouquets that you pinned on Pinterest you actually want, and talk through that. And I've just kind of learned over time, okay, these are the different florals that people need, and these are all the different vendors that they need. And I kind of dabble in a little bit of everything. Yeah. Just because you have to be aware of what the catering team is doing and what the videographer needs that's different than what the photographer needs. And so I just do my best to kind of pull that together. And then we look at the big picture and we say, okay, what vendors do we need to bring this to life, and where can we place our money? And that's why I always say, you got to figure out your budget first. Yeah. There's people that come to me and I say, what's your budget? And they say, I don't know.
You're like, let's talk later.
And so the first thing we do is we sit down and I say, you need to nail down a budget. And it can be flexible. I don't care if it's even 10 grand flexible, but I want your, we're going to spend 20 grand on this wedding. Great. Because we need to look at all the pieces and really decide, because you're not going to be able to get everything. Right. And you have to expect the unexpected sometimes with weddings. Yeah. But we are going to do all we can to just make it beautiful.
That's so fun. I'm like dying. I think being a planner sounds so fun, but then I see them on the wedding day and they're always running around like these little crazy chickens, like just like dealing with all these fires that they need to put out, right? These kinds of things. I'm like, maybe I'll just actually stick with my camera. But it sounds very fun. Just the whole, I loved planning my wedding. And looking back, it was like really chuggy and ugly. But I thought it was awesome in the moment. And I thought it was so fun planning it. So I'm just like jealous of your life. That's so
that's
fun.
how I feel. And my mom, I took my mom to assist with me in a wedding in Idaho on Saturday.
Really?
And she said, yeah, you didn't even eat your dinner. I'm like, I didn't have time to eat my dinner. There was a lot going on.
Right. Yeah, there always is more going on than you think there's going to be.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so funny. Do you have anything about wedding culture, whether here in Utah or I know you've worked around the country, that you wish would change?
Ooh, that's a hard one. I think with COVID, watching people celebrate more intimate weddings has been really powerful to watch. And I guess my personal opinion, you don't have to agree with this, is that the less is more sometimes when it comes to people. And so if I could just totally change in people's minds that you don't need to invite 250 people to have a party.
Yeah.
Again, if you love to dance, invite all your favorite dancing friends. If you don't love to dance, you don't have to.
Right.
But invite, 50 to 100 people that are so close to you and your soon-to-be spouse. And just have a blast. And I think with that, to all the guests out there that go to weddings, dress up and stay the whole freaking time.
Please.
Because regardless of the wedding I've been to, everyone leaves early these days. And I don't know if it's because we partied our hearts out right when COVID kind of stopped and now we're tired. We all need a nap. I don't know. Come on, you guys. But if we could change that and just, you don't have to invite your mom's sister's cousin's best friend and her 7 kids or whatever to the wedding to make it a good day. Invite the people that you love most. And some people will have an issue with that. And that's okay. And I always tell brides and grooms and just couples everywhere, hold your ground.
Yeah.
Like, hold your peace too. Like, choose what you want and stick with it. And eventually people will listen to you and they'll fall into place and they may not like it. And if they have a huge problem with it, then don't invite them.
Yeah.
Because it's your day. It's not your parents' day. It's not your maid of honor's day. You need to make the most of it and you're going to want to love it and not hate it later on.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what you're saying. That's okay. So I haven't talked about this on the podcast yet, but my own wedding, I kind of did an intimate wedding before they were cool. Intimate. There were like 100 people there, so it wasn't tiny. Yeah. But the only people who got an invitation were the people who were like related to me, who I saw and loved, or like my very best friends, and then like some of my best friends' parents. Like, yeah, there was just like our people who got invited, and I didn't send out a mass like open house invite list. I didn't post it on Instagram. Like, it wasn't open invite, and part of my reason for that was because I was afraid my wedding would feel like a popularity contest if I invited a whole ton of people and I was scared no one would show up. I probably need therapy about that or something. I was just scared no one would come. So I only wanted to invite the people who I knew would come, you know? But looking back, I'm so glad we did it that way because everybody did come and they stayed the whole time and we just had a party with our favorite people. And there's nobody in my pictures or video that I don't like know and love and like that. I will have a lifelong relationship with every single one of the people who were at my wedding.
Thank you, because I was there.
I know, yeah, you were. Her husband was one of our groomsmen. Exactly.
I was just the plus one, but I got lucky enough to
go.
No,
of course. I forgot. You were at my wedding. I'm like, well, we have to be lifelong best friends now. I just said it. It's love
official.
that.
We're putting the podcast into the universe.
Oh, that's so funny. But yes, basically, I agree with what you're saying, that I think people are afraid to not just do what's always been done, especially with guest lists. I think that's kind of the most taboo thing to change is like smaller guest list or ask them to stay the whole time or that kind of stuff. But I agree with what you're saying. It can make it a lot more special. Yeah,
it could. And everybody's different. I mean, my husband comes from a blended family. So it's him and 14 siblings, like a ton of adoptees. And it's just this whole thing. Wow. And so our goal was to get the whole family there. So while I would have loved to go get married in Tuscany, right? And have just my 2 siblings and parents and his parents and 15 siblings. There's no way.
Right.
So we did it, and we kind of did destination in Salt Lake City because my family's from the upper Midwest and his is from Australia and Kentucky and from all over the place.
That's cool.
But ours was just a big kind of family gathering, like a big family event. And honestly, if we hadn't done the reception afterwards and invited a few more people, I would have been totally okay with it.
Really?
If we had just danced the night away with family and like the close friends we had at our luncheon. So,
Yeah. That's cute.
yeah. It's good to reflect. Crazy.
I know. We're like, let's just talk about our weddings all day. It's so fun.
No, let's not. Let's move on.
I know. Like,
Cringe.
never showing anyone anything from that ever again. Okay. We covered all the questions I wanted to ask you about specifically, but is there any other words of wisdom you want to share with a couple who's planning their wedding, who's listening to this podcast, or any other general advice you have?
I just think don't let what you see on the internet sway you from believing that you can do it. I think sometimes we get caught up in social media for a lot of different things, but especially if you're planning a wedding, you're seeing all of these things on how beautiful it has to be and how much money you have to spend and all these vendors that you have to have, and you don't. But I do believe, because I'm a wedding planner, that you can do a lot and that you should not DIY the whole thing, because it makes life really complicated, like we've talked about, when you're doing everything yourself or you're making your close family or bridal party do it. And so I'm just all couples, all places, all budgets. That's kind of my little thing right now.
I love that.
Just we can all do it, and we can all do it together, and we're just here to support you. And I think the biggest tip I would give in planning is just be open in your communication with yourself. Like, be open with what you want. Talk with your partner about things. Make sure you're communicating clearly early on with your family about what you want. And again, hold your ground there and be strong in kind of what you want, and make sure it's within reason, right?
Right.
Make sure it's feasible. Don't talk about, eloping to Fiji and literally no one can afford it. That's not a great idea.
Right.
But be communicative and open and just have fun.
Yeah.
Find ways to have fun with the process. And if you take a full 2 weeks off of wedding planning and literally do not talk about your wedding, that's really healthy. And I highly encourage that if you're feeling the stress coming on.
Yeah.
And then just, find people to help support you. One of the things I'm doing right now is putting together a DIY planning package for people that can't afford to hire a planner. And it's got that timeline workbook in it and all of these other resources that I'm just pouring my heart and soul into right now. And I'm stressed about it, but it's because I want to make it so good.
Yeah.
So that people can have that help. So they're not stressed and their family's not stressed and their vendors aren't stressed. And it just helps them all come together and prepare for their big day. So
I love that. I can't wait to see how that turns out. I'm so excited.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Well, you're awesome. Thank you so much for coming and chatting with me today. You're so wise at all of these wedding things.
Thanks, Whitney.
I love it. Okay, so tell people where they can find your business on Instagram, how they can connect with you, all that stuff.
Yeah, so my name's Amanda. I own Everson Events, so at Everson Events on Instagram. I'm constantly posting tips and tricks like Whitney. Just follow along there, and then you can reach out to me on my website. I have an awesome free planning checklist that you can download there. And you can just kind of follow along throughout the process. And I always tell people you can email me. My email's on my website, and just reach out if you have any questions. I love to chat with people. I know that not all planners have time for that, but I'm newer in my business and I just love helping people in any way that I can. And I think I'll always live there in this. Just anybody who comes along who needs my help, I'm here. So.
Oh my gosh, you're the best. Okay, so everybody go email Amanda, spam her inbox. No, that's awesome. Yeah, you have a lot of awesome resources, and I hope that everybody out there will take advantage of them, because we all need as much help as we can get around here. So awesome. Okay, well, thank you all out there for listening. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll be back with another episode next week. If you haven't yet, go ahead and leave a little review or rating on this podcast. That's very helpful to reach people so we can keep doing this. And yeah, hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me know what you think, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.